Hello and welcome to the ART Conference 2021 and the Propel Showcase on transforming productivity and wellbeing through engagement and innovation. My name is Lee Panglea and I'm the head of the CIPD in Scotland and Northern Ireland. I'm delighted to be joined today by Professor Colin Lindsay, Deputy Director of the Scottish Centre for Employment Research at the University of Strathclyde, and Professor Patricia Findlay, Director of the Scottish Centre for Employment Research and Co-Chair of Scotland's Fair Work Convention. Thank you for joining us today. This showcase video is to give you an insight into the work of the Propel Hub and the University of Strathclyde in particular, and to provide a taster of the sessions within this year's ARC conference. So, less about me. I'm going to pass you over to Tricia now. So, Tricia, can you tell us about your research for the UK Research and Innovation and what it's trying to achieve? And I guess how it links in with the broader aims of the Propel Hub.
Okay, hi Lee. Our research is part of a programme of activity that's funded by the Economic and Social Research Council on the theme of transforming productivity. And all of the projects are looking in different ways at how to address what we call the UK's productivity puzzle. So that is why the UK lags the productivity of comparable economies, and especially in relation to the other G7 economies. And the Propel Hub is led by these projects and some other relevant research teams around the country, working really closely together to make all of the projects a bit more than the sum of their individual parts when it comes to trying to think about how we transform productivity. So our particular project at Strathclyde is really exploring the relationships between the types of management or HR practices that a firm adopts, the nature of work engagement in that firm, and the likelihood that employees will participate constructively in innovation. And we're interested in all of these things because we know that innovation can be an important influence on productivity, and because we also know that work engagement and the opportunity to take part in innovation can also have a very positive effect on employee wellbeing. So what we've done then is to bring together researchers who have real strengths in these core concepts and relationships that we're exploring. Our colleagues in the Netherlands, so that's Eva Demeruti and Arnold Bakker, are really at the forefront of research on work engagement. And our team at Strathclyde are experts in researching job quality and the advantage of high job quality. And that would include, intrinsic factors like the nature of the work that you do, which overlaps very closely with the Netherlands team. But also we're interested in extrinsic factors like how employees are rewarded or feel secure at work. And we're very interested in our research on the importance of having an opportunity to make a difference. So we call it engaging in discretionary behaviours. How do you do the things that you don't have to do that might both make your job much more enjoyable, but also be very good for business performance? And we're kind of doing that practically by working with 30 businesses across different sectors with different productivity profiles. So manufacturing, utility, energy, construction, I'll forget one, engineering and technology, business and consumer services. And what we're doing practically is to interview key executives and managers quite intensively, and then administer a specially designed bespoke survey across the whole workforce. What those companies will get from that, I think, is to learn a lot about how they fare in terms of work engagement and innovation and what impact that has on their business performance. So a shameless plug, if there are any CIPD members in companies in these sectors across the UK who would like to be involved and they employ more than 100 people, which is our criteria, then please feel free to get in touch.
Nothing wrong with a little shameless plug, Tricia. And I'm imagining while these issues have always been key to improving productivity and performance, they'll be even more crucial post-COVID, I would suspect.
Absolutely, because we really don't know what the impact of productivity will be if you disaggregate that to a sectoral level. We know that some sectors have been hit really significantly. We know that other sectors have continued without as much disruption, but we also know that the ways that we work have changed rather significantly as well. So that trying to understand how we do that, and we will do that as part of the research. It clearly wasn't in our original plan, but we will now try to capture what the impact of COVID has been.
Okay, thank you for that. So Colin, there's already quite a lot of research out there on employee engagement, but this research focuses on the relationship between engagement and innovation. Why do you feel this is of particular importance generally, but also perhaps post-COVID?
Yeah, thanks, Lee. I think you're absolutely right. I think in the past year and in the year to come, in the COVID and post-COVID workplace, we've seen incredible change in businesses, changes in business models and how work is organised. There's a challenge to businesses that need to rebuild their customer base or diversify. Our research is interested in the contribution that employees can make on the front line to driving that innovation. As you say, there's a lot of work around engagement already out there, but we're particularly interested in the relationship between what we call work engagement, which we have clearly defined measures of, and what we might call innovative work behaviour. So innovative work behaviours we might define as any employee behaviour that's around generating new ideas, introducing new ideas, applying new ideas that are of benefit to the business. And we've got specific questions that we can ask employees and managers about those behaviours, about do employees bring new ideas and find new ways of working? Do employees get their ideas heard, champion ideas to try and drive change in the business? So as Tricia was saying, this is a very specific area of what we might call discretionary behaviour, of going the extra mile that can be of particular benefit for businesses that are going through a kind of very dramatic and significant change process, as we've seen over the last period. I think the other particularly interesting bit of our research is that, as you point out, Lee, there's a lot of work out there around engagement. Sometimes engagement gets a bit of a bad rep because there's sort of, some people see it as a bit of a buzzword, and there's lots of measures out there and strategies out there that maybe aren't based on the best evidence base. Our work is rooted in very robust evidence, and the concept that we use in this space, the concept of work engagement, has been It was introduced and validated by Arnold Bakker and colleagues. Arnold's a member of our team, so we've really brought, as Tricia said, the top international experts in this space into our research. And that literature and that research on work engagement basically says it's about designing jobs and workplaces that elicit feelings amongst employees. And those feelings are defined in terms of our jobs in a way feel invigorated, they feel like they really want to get into work and really want to contribute. Do they feel dedicated to their job and that they feel they find meaning and purpose in that work? And do they feel absorbed in their work? So do you have the kind of job where you get immersed in it, you forget where your time is because it's something that you can really take hold of and take ownership of? So those very well established and very robust measures of work engagement have been demonstrated in the past to be good predictors of in-role performance. So basically being productive, working well with customers, delivering on your KPIs. Our question is, are those same engagement factors good of employees' abilities to innovate and support change in the business in this very rapidly changing business environment?
Okay, no, thank you for that. And for your research, would I be right in thinking that well-being is as important an outcome as innovation, or an important outcome, I guess, of your work?
Absolutely. I think from our perspective, these two key outcomes are really two sides of the same coin. I guess for many business leaders at the moment, probably the two biggest things that they're thinking about in terms of their employees is the issues I've just talked about, is can we support our employees to help us drive change in the business? So that would be our innovative work behaviour component of our research. And of course, every business is really strongly focused on employee well-being at the moment. As it happens, these concepts of work engagement have a very strong link to employee wellbeing as well. In fact, the initial research on work engagement, employee work engagement 20 years ago was particularly interested in employee wellbeing. That was really the purpose of that research. It was really asking, we have more engaged employees, are they less likely to experience burnout? Are they less likely to experience mental strain in the workplace? So we'll be capturing those kind of wellbeing measures. We'll be capturing a raft of other wellbeing data. We're working with my colleague at the University of Strathclyde, Sir Barry Burns, who used to be the Chief Medical Officer, is now a Professor of Health Policy at the University of Strathclyde. So again, we've got strong expertise and we feel very good measures of the relationship between workplace practices and employees' wellbeing. And as you point out, Lee, again, never been more important than as we build back after COVID.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely, Colin. Thank you. So, Patricia, from the perspective of CIPD members, another area, or what will be really key to CIPD members of interest, another important area of focus for your research is around the impact on the workplace, so the choices and decisions, I guess, that people and development professionals and business leaders make. Can you share a little more of your work on understanding the factors that shape decision-making processes and I guess the resultant impact?
Okay, so academics have long researched and spent a lot of attention trying to understand the impact of different types of management and HR practices on business outcome, and CIPD members will be really familiar with that broader HRM performance literature, which has been very influential. But one of the things we know far less about is how are these practices chosen in the first place? How are they adopted? What's the decision-making process? And that's because we've got quite a lot of research that says, well, there is an HRM performance link, so there are high commitment or high involvement practices that produce good business outcomes. But we also know that the adoption of those practices can be very limited. So that's an interesting tension, isn't it? There are some practices out there that look like they produce good outcomes, but in actual fact, businesses are not adopting them. So we want to get behind the why of some of those questions and some of those issues. Why are those practices chosen in the first place? We want to be able to work really closely with business decision makers at a senior level. So that would be at a strategic level, an HR level, and indeed people who have strategic responsibility for operations, if that doesn't sound like a bit of a contradiction, but looking at the highest level. And we want to know how they make strategic choices. So there's a big academic literature that says businesses in the same sector facing the same conditions can make distinct strategic choices. And that's quite important when it comes to decisions around things that contribute to job quality. But we don't know how they make those choices or why we get the patterns that we do. So to pick up on what Colin just talked about, we know that job design really matters. We know very, very little about how job design is decided upon. Who makes job design decisions in organisations? When they make those decisions, are they thinking about building a job that produces vigour and engagement and excitement in the terms that Colin talked about? Or is something else driving that? Is that to do with the ultimate customer, or is it to do with a technology? So in the same way that we can apply that strategic choice lens to job design, we could apply it to things like performance management or management establishment of KPIs or a whole host of other things across the HR domain where choices are made but often not terribly explicitly. So we're interested in understanding how does that happen and what influences it? What are the key constraints? What are the key enablers? Are some of those competitive pressures? Are they sector specific? Are some of them more technologically influenced? Because what we really want to know is how much scope do managers have to choose something different, to choose practices that can simultaneously produce work engagement, innovation, productivity and well-being? And do they ever think that when they design HR practices, those are the things that they're trying to deliver? And in that sense, we're taking the research from the initial decision making through the whole trajectory of you make a decision about practices or you don't. You just inherit a decision. You make a decision, you adopt certain practices, those practices have an impact, those impacts create outcomes. And we're trying to follow that through all the way to see if there's a possibility of interventions at various points of that to change the ultimate outcomes, which are productivity and wellbeing. And one of the things we're doing, which is, I suppose, slightly unusual methodologically, is to work intensively with a small subsection of our case study companies to actually deliver some interventions. So to say, OK, we've looked at what you're doing, here are some suggested interventions, can we put these in place and then measure what impact they have? And then there's one last element. People like Colin and I, our primary interest is in what happens at an organisational level or a business level. That's what we're really interested in. But we've got another part of the research which is led by Graham Roy, who's also part of the Propel Hub, which is modelling how, if you made those changes at a workplace level and you improved performance, what would that mean for the sector performance? What would that mean for national economic performance? So if you can take the likely gains of some of these interventions and then say, what if we applied them to the whole sector or a subsection of the sector? What would it look like? And then start to think about how we then drive the kind of change that produces the outcomes that we're aspiring to.
Lee, can I maybe just add to what Patricia said there? And it connects to the point I was making about the measures of engagement that we've arrived at. The reason this all, we think, connects up together, that is, if we're right, and if the extensive research literature that's been driven by our Netherlands colleagues who are part of our project, if they're right, and those measures of work engagement that I spoke about around, does your job invigorate you? Does it absorb you? Does it give you a sense of meaning and dedication? We're right that those are the key components of engagement, and that those key components of engagement are important in understanding well-being and performance amongst employees. That leads us to a space where, if we're trying to elicit those feelings in employees, then the decisions that managers and business leaders make around job quality and workplace practice become absolutely crucial, because you're not going to elicit those feelings of invigoration and dedication and absorption from any other means other than investing in people's jobs and investing in strong workplace practices. There's another concept that we use called the job demand resources model, again, actually established by one of our co-researchers, Eva De Merite, back in the early 2000s. And that basically says, if you want to know why people are engaged and productive and innovative in the workplace, it's about a balance between their job demands, so that's the pressures that we and the challenge that we place on our employees, and the resources that they have access to. And very often employers will say to me, what do you mean by resources? And we really just mean things like, do you have access to learning? Do you have a degree of autonomy in your job? Crucially, do you feel supported by your supervisors and by your peers? And do you get strong, constructive and developmental feedback? So those are areas of workplace practice where the HR community and business decision makers are absolutely crucial to shaping people's experiences. They're also, to go back to your initial question about COVID, Lee, they're also is where, in a rapidly changing workplace environment, it's important to think how we maintain those resources: strong supervision, good feedback, strong autonomy for employees, great learning opportunities. If we make good decisions around investing in those kind of resources, our argument, and this is something we're testing in this research, our argument is maybe we end up with more engaged, healthier and more productive employees.
Okay, no, thank you for summarising that so well, Colin. Just moving on, Meryl, from the perspective of CIPD, these are really important issues as we, I guess, seek to support our members, our CIPD members, post-COVID. I know that you're CIPD's point person, working within the Propel Hub. So building on what Colin and Tricia have shared with us so far, can you just briefly share a little more about CIPD's role in the project?
Well, CIPD's role is to, first of all, help people like Tricia and Colin find companies to work with as part of their research. But it's also to look at how we at CIPD ensure that our standards, our programmes and our research are also aligned to subjects and topics that will help our members improve their workplaces and to learn from best practice that's coming out of the university community.
Okay, no, thank you for that. I guess we're probably out of time now, and as always, I can listen so much longer to what Tricia and Colin are talking about. The research is fascinating, and as Tricia says, they are always on the lookout for more companies to work with, and particularly as we go in to 2021. So I'm very interested in engaging with other organisations, and I would just like to thank Colin and Tricia for their input. And if you are interested, and those of you that are listening, I'm echoing that. Please go to the Propel Hub website to find out more. Thank you.